You ever wondered if your childhood has an impact on your life today? Or maybe you've wondered if there's any trauma or experiences that you can do anything about. Obviously, the past is in the past, but what if it isn't? What if your past is having more of a play in your present? Well, that's what we're going to cover today. So if that interests you, stay tuned. This is The Couch, the place for masculine mental health. My name is Dr. Gregory Donahue. Today we're covering if childhood really matters. When I first started on this subject, or I'll just say my own journey into mental health and trying to become self-aware, childhood came up a lot. It was the idea of, can something that is in the past, years and years in the past, still influence me today? And even if it does, why does it even matter? Because the past is in the past. I can't do anything about it. Well, as I've discovered, the past is never quite in the past. And honestly, our childhoods create a foundation from which every memory that we add on top of that is viewed from that lens. So if we were treated a certain way while we were growing up, we're more likely to be looking for those signs in other relationships. So for instance, my childhood was a little more on the rigid side in the terms of I needed to meet these certain standards. There was a combination of religious standards, and my mom was a single mom for a lot of it, so she needed things to be done a certain way, and there wasn't a whole lot of room for us creating more chaos in the household. She was kind of the only one going through that process. So I got this idea that in order to be loved, I needed to do what I was told, which is why later on in life, my favorite question to my wife was, what do you want me to do? Just tell me what you want me to do. But in doing so, I put all the pressure on her to be my parent rather than for me to figure out, hey, what do I need to do for myself so I can be present for her? So what I've had to do is I've had to look at the foundation that was set in my childhood. So I will look at current triggers. The current triggers to me today are things that really hit heavy, whether criticism by my wife or a specific topic she brings up or anytime I feel rejected. Anything that seems to have emotional volume more than the usual item is usually one indicator, especially if our spouses or significant others are confused by how strong we're reacting. Oh man, and a big one for me is if I can't seem to explain why I feel the way I do, and I'm kind of searching for reasons and looking for any reason why that might be, that's usually a good indicator that my emotion is coming from both the present and the past at the same time. But one of the tricky parts about the past is that it largely becomes subconscious. When I'm looking for traumas or I'm looking for threats related to things I've been through in the past, my brain doesn't immediately bring it all together and say, oh, that's right, I experienced this, this, and this, therefore this would be extra traumatizing to me. Instead, the brain wants to forget about that while it's still scanning for threats. So we're going to react to anything that's related to our childhood a hair stronger or a lot stronger than we would. And you may have noticed this, you'll actually see it more in other people that you work with, significant other family members, where their reaction seems so blown out of proportion to the situation. If someone is reacting more than the situation seems to deem worthy, there is probably some sort of past childhood event where the emotions are borrowing from both the present circumstance and the past. So why does it even matter? Let's just say it is. Let's say that you can say clearly, yes, I know that it's coming from my past. It's because my mom did X, Y, or Z, or my dad did this, or I experienced this with my siblings, and aunt and uncle, whatever. If you can identify it, then from that point, it's important to know that the blame, the reason for your emotion is on two things. Because when I'm reacting to an emotion about, let's just say my wife said or did something that triggered my past emotions. When she does that, in my mind, she is the reason for all of that emotion. So I'm gonna take all of my emotion from past and present, and I will lump it on to the person who's in front of me, whether that's the person who cut me off on the freeway, whether that's my boss or coworker, anybody that seems to spark that memory in me, they become the enemy. So we try to dump all of that onto them. Now what that looks like is we start looking for reasons why that person deserves that much resentment, fear, hatred, whatever it is. So in doing that, we have to get pretty creative. So not only do we look for patterns in the past about that specific person, but we will also try to mentally and emotionally exaggerate why what they did was so bad. Now this is tricky to spot because a lot of times the person did do something offensive or something that should spark our defensiveness. But the problem is the volume, and especially if you notice a mental fixation, especially if other people don't recognize the things you're trying to say. If they either think you're exaggerating or they don't seem to get where you're coming from, it's a good indicator. Now, if I notice, let's just say, yes, I do notice that it's combined with my past. What that will usually do is that will alleviate some of the emotion from the person in front of us. So our significant other, which is usually the most common trigger point, if our significant other hit that spot and all of our childhood traumas there, and we're just red zoned on them as the problem. First thing we can do is recognize if this is related to my childhood, if I experience something similar, if this feels a gut level like catastrophic, and if I can locate it, then I can realize, okay, they deserve only half the blame, and then the other half belongs to my childhood. It will be so much easier for that person to accept your feelings if you accurately divvy up the pie of responsibility. If I try to put that all on a person, what happens is they're gonna feel like their punishment, their emotional punishment for me doesn't fit the crime, and they'll get defensive. I've done this so many times when other people did this to me. I sensed that there was this weird reaction, and I was like, whoa, where's this coming from? And I would back up from the relationship, which means I'm no longer listening to them. So anytime my childhood gets involved, I'm less likely to be listened to. I'm more likely to push people away because I'm trying to convince them why they deserve to have all of this emotion. And the reality is they don't. They don't deserve to have that much emotion. They deserve to have some of it, and then we need to tell them why the rest of the emotion is actually coming from childhood. It makes them far more likely to hear us out, and then from there, they're more likely to actually care about our emotions and maybe do something different because they realize they sparked something that was sensitive or personal in us. Otherwise, we're both gonna feel extremely unheard. And I don't know if you've ever had conversations like that where someone's childhood got sparked, the conversation escalates, both people are confused, both people feel very hurt, and it doesn't go anywhere. That is childhood at play, and it takes a lot of work to figure it out. So that's how you can identify it. That, in my opinion, is why it's important, and it can make all the difference in your relationships right now. If you don't do it and recognize where there's childhood, and it can definitely make all the difference once you start recognizing where childhood has snuck into your emotions in your current relationships. So I hope this has been helpful for you today. Please drop some comments. If you have any personal stories or testimonies about how your childhood has snuck into your relationships, please feel free to share them. And let me know of any practical steps that you would like from here. I will definitely cover more on how to identify specific patterns in childhood, but it's a huge topic, so I'm gonna end it there today. I hope you guys have some great mental health today. Take care of yourselves. Bye. Anything you've heard in this video is strictly for entertainment and educational purposes only. It is not intended to be therapeutic or to replace therapy in any way.